Hey guys, welcome to Surf and Show. I'm Noel Salas, San Clemente, California special guest, Matt Biolos, Duke Aipa. This is going to be an epic episode. Guys, thanks for being on the show. We're talking about Puddle Jumper Sting. Two guys.
Not Stinger.
Yep, you got it.
This is going to be a long one, guys, but we're going to have some fun. Puddle Jumper Sting, tell us how the collab started.
Well, from my perspective, Duke just kind of reached out to me 5 years ago. He's like, oh, wow, we should make a board. Basically, Duke came down and showed me like all the intricacies of the Sting. And, you know, I'm obviously enough of a student of surf history to know, you know, about his father and the general evolution of it and who the main players were.
Sure.
The guys on the South Shore and Mark Richards, who we do the Mark Richards boards for the USA.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I was like super into it right from the start. I thought it was a great idea. Basically, just wanted to grab a couple of our kind of known or proven kind of models and see if we could upgrade them by incorporating the design element of the Sting into some of our existing boards. And it ended up being a little more work than just that. We had to adjust the board a little to fit it,
Sure.
you know, the outline, and revisit some. With the Puddle Jumper, it was pretty smooth and easy transition. And then for me, Duke was really exacting, really passionate, really detailed, and it has a really engineering sort of way of approaching it. I was impressed with that. Like, rather than just like typical flamboyant Hawaiian, like, all right, shake them up. It was more like boom, boom, boom.
I'm still flamboyant.
We just worked together on all the scaling, all the sizing, the logo lockups, fin marks, the depth of the wing, the placement of the wing. And Duke does most of the handiwork. He did most of fine shaping and finishing and details. And I did most of the CAD work.
Right.
And then sent the CADs to Duke, and Duke put them into his program and refined the CADs. And we bounced the CADs back and forth. We stood in a room together like this numerous times. We drank cocktails together and solved the world's problems.
That's it.
And for our community, can I just pull the board down like this? When we're talking about the Sting and how far it is up from the tail, maybe you could walk us through that a little bit, and what's the Sting gonna do, and how do we relate the Sting to a wing?
Well, for that, I'm going to go backwards. So the first model that Matt and I started working on was the Sub-Scorcher Sting. And he gave me a buzz and was like, hey, what do you think about doing a Sting version of my Puddle Jumper?
2 boards.
Yeah, 2 board.
A series. And for me, I was like, that got me excited because the Sting element with the Puddle Jumper would make that a dangerous weapon.
Sure.
You know, it'd be super fast and pivoty when you need it to be.
Right.
And that's exactly what it did. You know, for a standard wing board, it's usually about 8 inches up from the tail. The Sting is easily double that, around 16 inches. But what that does is it moves the area of pivot. So like if you're talking about a winged board, you have more of a gradual outline. So you may have more control because of that gradual outline before the break, just before the tail. But with the Sting, it gives it like a more intuitive automatic response before you would expect it to respond.
Sure.
So like for a more front-footed surfer, that would be an advantage.
Right.
Because it's going to allow them to pivot easier when more of the weight is forward.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, from my point of view, it opens up the live area. You know, you can be riding really tiny waves and standing a little bit more forward for speed and still like make that quick turn without moving your foot back on the kicktail. It gives you a more open area to turn from.
That's huge.
The small tiny waves is fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially when you're limited on the face that you have to work with.
Yeah.
It's Puddle Jumper. It's very similar. I wouldn't say exact, but it's within 95% of the original Puddle Jumper dimensions.
Okay.
It's the original Puddle Jumper rocker, very close to the original Puddle Jumper outline with the cutaway. You know, I designed that board almost 10 years ago, so there's a little bit of bend and curve and a little bit of things that my eye looks differently in the room and on the screen than I did then. But it's Puddle Jumper. You know, it's wide, it's relatively low rocker. It's got a single concave from, you know, basically the front fins to the nose. Deepest right under the front foot, which gives you plenty of curve under your front foot. It gives you some rail rocker right here because of the concave, which loosens up a flat planky board. Because it's wide, We never really want too much single concave. We want to be able to get it up on a rail.
Right.
It's got a noticeable, it's got an average amount of single concave. It zeroes out in the tip, slowly grows under the front foot, its deepest. And then right around the front fins, the rail rocker starts to accelerate again, and you have V basically from the rear quads out the back of the tail, which gives the board a lot more control on the tail and kind of gives you a nice curvy rail rocker. You're going from concave here to V here, so it puts a lot of curve in the rail line rocker of a relatively flat center line.
Sure.
So from here to here, it's really straight, really flat. That's where your drive comes from. When you go on a rail, you use the curve. And then the Sting breaks that curve off and gives you more radical rail, direction changing.
Sure.
Just jam it more without it maybe drifting it like it would have in the past or slider. So it gives a little more bite. And the athletic surfers, the young, fast, strong surfers, they're digging it. You watch guys like Ian Crone surf it on waist-high lefts, or Rasta surf it at waist-high rights.
Or Noah just going Richter on overhead surfing it.
Noah Betchen.
Yes.
They're just flying. Cole Houshmand surfed it at like one of the heavy, for Southern Orange County, a heavy wave.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, backside, just square bottom turning, just pulling into barrels and doing his big backside fin hangers on thumping radical, well overhead, powerful winter waves. And I don't think you could do that on a normal puddle jumper without the wing taking away the surface area back there. So, the hot shots are having fun on it. I enjoy it. I really like it at gutless small waves, where it kind of adds a bit of a release and a bit of you can put a little jam. You can get your speed and then jam it a little harder.
Right.
Hope not to throw your back out.
That's where I'm at.
Quad tends to be, because of the V in the tail, the low, this also acts like a fin, that straight line of the stringer, and the V flaring off, you get this like drive here. So, it's really cool as a quad, because this kind of gives you some drive and stability behind in the last few inches of the board. Guys that are riding it really small, like I'm like assuming the same volume as a performance board, guys that are riding it downsized, or guys that ride small boards, can kind of really make it work as a thruster.
Right.
But when you get into like maybe the typical customer, guys like myself or Duke, or just a guy who buys it off the rack, they tend to ride a higher volume to weight ratio.
Sure.
And it might feel a little stiff and directional as a thruster, but as a quad, it's just free and fast and really fun.
Epic. Nate, always stoked to have you on the show. Been getting some waves and been watching you rip on the Puddle Jumper Sting. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how the board feels under your feet, what fin setup you're riding, that kind of stuff.
My original one was actually a 5.5. I figured go a little more liters, a little bigger, but for me personally, it felt a little quirky, and this is Ben Kelly's board, which is a 5.4, and it's 29 liters, and I just like that it felt a little more sensitive for how wide the board is, how flat the board is.
Yeah.
I've been riding it as a quad. I think this Sting gives it more pivot and performance than the original one.
Yeah.
But it's super stable, paddles well, has a ton of speed, really flat deck, and it's a blast in mediocre to below average surf. Actually, yesterday when we came out, it was pretty good size.
Yeah.
It was probably max height that you would want to ride it in. It was bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Right.
And I had been riding a shortboard, so it was breaking. It's built to be loose, but going from a shortboard to this, it took a little adjusting.
Sure.
But once I got used to it, I think this pivot point and reduction in surface area really adds well to this model, and it gives it a more performance feel.
Yeah.
And it for sure on turns, I could feel this wing being higher up, braking and pivoting more so than the original Puddle Jumper.
Okay. And then what fin setup are you running?
I've only ridden as a quad.
Right.
I guess I was telling you Robbie McCormick's been riding as a thruster.
Right.
But as a quad, it goes great. It's loose, it's fast, carries speed really well, and I was like, I like how it works. I'm just going to stick with this. So this is Mayhem's large quad fins with FCS.
Nice.
But I had the Aipa fins on the 5.5, and I felt like the board had more hold with those fins.
Okay.
But overall, it just felt a little clunky, a little too full on the rail.
Just the board was a little big.
Yeah. It paddled well, but on the wave face itself, it lacked that like spark. Where this one, right when I got on the 5.4, I felt that.
Sick.
So I asked Ben if I could hijack his board, and been riding it ever since.
Sick.
Design, first of all, came from a hydroplane speedboat. My dad in 1973 saw a boat race, and the fastest boat on the water was the hydroplane speedboat. He saw that when it came to the turn, when all the other types of boards were slowing down, the hydroplane was accelerating through the turn. And not only that, it was able to pivot so fast and maintain its speed.
Right.
So after the race, he talked to the pilots, and he talked to the people that were engineers.
Yeah.
Right. And got the lowdown of what it does. So my dad was like, oh. So he went immediately to the shaping room. He already had a blank that he roughed out. So he drew the outline of the Sting on there, shaped it, blah, blah, blah. Got the Rasta first one out, okay? He got the first board to Larry Bertelman. They went to this spot called Lighthouse to test it out. And at Lighthouse is a good cliff that you can watch, great vantage point. So my dad's just watching Larry, and Larry's going, bah, bah, bah. This is single fin times, right? So not a whole lot of bah going on.
Right.
So my dad was like, oh, Larry's stinging the wave. And that's where the Sting came from. You fast forward, when the board became popular in 1975, 76, everyone started copying it in the mainland, and it was being called something else, just to have some kind of difference. And that became the popular name of it because California had more visibility.
Went from Sting to Stinger.
Went from Sting to Stinger. Yeah. So my dad always had to tell his damn story of Sting, not Stinger. Like, oh, you don't stinger a wave, you sting a wave.
And we have friend Drew Toons on the North Shore, talented artist, illustrator, kind of quirky, genius kind of guy. Yeah. And approached him and said, hey, you want to do one of these cartoons like you used to do for the Vulcan Pipe Pro back in the days to lay out, to describe this collaboration we're doing with the Aipas. And he's like, yeah. So Duke went, and he's like George Lucas designing Star Wars in the 70s. He wrote the dialogue to tell the story like he just described here, and then he drew these little stick figure storyboards, and Drew took it and made the cartoons describing Ben's inspiration and the development of the project, of the board. And it came out really cool, and we're just always, with our brand, with Lost and the people we work with, collaboration stuff, we always try and tell a different story, do things a little different.
Yeah.
There's more to surfboards and surfing and this culture than he won a contest by what we design, so we like to make it fun.
Yeah.
Asa, tell us what you ran and what you like this board.
This board, little 5.2, super fun little guy. Totally impressed me. Started with the twin plus trailer setup right here, and it was fun. It just felt like it was a little loose, a little squirrely. It didn't have the same drive, and then put in the quads, and the board lit up. I didn't want to get off of it.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I started here. This is the Pivot Twin Plus trailer, and there's something about where the Sting is here. It's pretty high up, so I feel like the board is just pivoting faster than maybe a board that you would ride that has a wing, which would be further back. And because it's breaking, the water's breaking off here, and the board's pivoting so fast, I felt like this into the lip was a little bit too quick for me. I did get some good waves, and I felt like it had good flow, but when I switched to the quad, I don't know, there's something about the two fins, putting it on rail, it's almost like it has more drive.
Yeah,
right?
This thing would drive into turns, out of turns.
Right.
You'd come off the whitewater, normally kind of bank a little off, but this thing just banked, whoop, right into the next one. So quick.
Yeah, there's a quickness. Now, the board is 5.2, and at times, from certain turns, like a roundhouse cutback, there was certain times where I felt like, man, I wish I had a little bit more rail line. So there was it being too short at certain times. But I rode the intermediate session for an hour, and I felt like that's where this board really came alive for me. There's something about the wave face being a little bit smaller, and then I'm getting into the lip quicker, and I didn't feel like I needed the rail line. As the wave got a little bit bigger or had a little bit more push, I felt like, okay, 5.2, yeah, I'm making it work. And the more time I spent on this board, the better it got for me.
Yeah, same here. I kind of felt like this board, it's one of those kind of boards as you ride it more, it almost feels like an extension of you, where you feel like, oh, you're not thinking about the turn, you're just kind of doing it naturally, and then it's coming together, and you're like, bam, bam, bam. And you look back after the wave, and you go, wow, that was a fun wave.
Yeah, to tag the waves here at Waco, doing 3 to 4 turns, and putting it in the pocket and getting the board to do what you want to do, what you're thinking. It's I feel like it's an extension of my imagination, and it takes less effort for me to put the board where I'm thinking I want to go. It's already there for me. Well, guys, I'm super stoked to have you guys on the show. These boards are fun. Get down to the local shop, order a custom. I think you guys will be stoked on it. Hey, look.
In California, you can just steal one and walk out.
Look, if you like the show, subscribe, ring the bell so you don't miss an
Don't
episode.
try that in Texas.
Hawaii, don't try to steal it in Hawaii.
Yeah.
No.
Hey, and give us a thumbs up if you like our content. Until next time, we'll see you in the water. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bro, that's such a rad stinger, bro.
What you talking about, honey boy?
It's Sting, not Stinger. You don't stinger a wave, you sting a wave. Get it?